Hey, thanks for joining. Okay, so today we're going to look at how to use Unity's animation and animation controller to make rich interfaces or user interfaces in a Unity app. So I have a project here in Unity that already has some sort of interactive animated interaction buttons and such. Now if I show you what that looks like, you'll get a sense. So here we have essentially an application that tries to put cloud services on one page, and we can see that I can do various things, and there's some animation going on here, like the fact that this sort of scaling effect that makes it look like each button zooms in. I can click on a button and get another, this will be another dialogue. I can go away from that and come down here, and if I hover for too long, I'll get a description about what that is. I promise I will. If I go here, there we are, and that will follow me if I go to different buttons, and you'll see that the description text changes. So for AI services, services that use AI or ML to recognize images, convert speech to text, etc. If I go here, it says services for granting access. So that's automatically taking some description of each button and showing it on this. And like I showed before, I can zoom in and I can sort of zoom out and close that, dismiss it, and if I hover here for about 2 seconds, it'll come back. Now what I want to do, and this will be the example now, I want to add a new kind of interaction. So as I hover in one, if I dismiss this, if I hover in here and then go away, there's a timer. And the timer basically cancels when I go outside that box. When I stay inside this region, the timer keeps going, and eventually the timer will fire. Now because this was already selected, the timer isn't going to, but we'll start again by going over a new one, and then the timer fired after about 3 seconds. So the thing is, the user, at the moment, the way that's set up, that'll be a bit of a surprise. So let's make a bar with a timer at the top, and it's got an indication that it's going to do something. So I'll show you what we mean. So here I've made a little panel. I've just disabled it so it wouldn't present, but you can see before when I was showing you the hitting play. But if I zoom in, you can see there's a question mark here, and that's supposed to represent that a dialogue will appear with some information. And the idea here is that this outline is going to get filled in over time. So if I go to this timer bar inline, and if I play with the scale, let's see, at the moment the scale is 0. You can probably just barely see it. It's tiny. But anyway, as I move this, as I increment this, you can see it's, and I can overshoot. But as I change that basically from 0 to say, well, to 1, we get the bar fills in. Now, if it's 0.5, then it's roughly half full, and so forth. So that's what this is all about. We want to animate that automatically using Unity animations, so that's with keyframes and everything. And then we want to basically have some interesting transitions. Now, I don't want that bar to always be there. It doesn't make sense for it to always be there. I want it so that when I put the mouse in the region, that it will actually fade in, then it will begin filling. When it gets completely full, it will cause the other dialogue to appear. And if it doesn't get full, but if I move the mouse out, then basically it'll fade out. So it'll be fade in, start filling, either fade out, or it'll cause the dialogue to show. So how do we do that? Well, we need the animator and the animator controller editor. So we go to Window, Animation like this, and it's popped up in a separate dialogue. How useful. Okay, so it appears, we get this tab. I can dock it down here. I'll also want the animation controller. Was animation or the animator, and we're going to take that, put that down here too. Okay, so on this So this is a panel, like just using UI. This is just a panel. So if I get, for instance, if I'm going game object UI panel, it's just one of those. So from this panel here, we want to animate this. Now we can animate any of the children from here as well. So if we hit create here, we're going to create a new animation. So I've got a directory called, or a folder called animations. We're going to call this one, the first animation will be fade in. But what's it called? So this is the timer bar, fade, let's see, fade in, no actually that's alright, fade in, sorry that's what I want. Okay, now what did it just do, by the way? So with the timer bar, it's already added an animator component. It's created this animator controller asset, and it's connected it here. So it's done those things just by hitting that create button. And we have one animation we're working on now, which is this timer bar fade in. So we can add a property. Now, because I want it to fade in, I need to change the colors of the image. So actually, let me just explain what I'm doing. If we look at this panel, its color is completely transparent. So we don't need to change that color, but we do need to make this all fade in as a group. We need to make the color for each of these separate pieces all fade in. So that will be just a change in the transparency. So that's what we're going to edit. We just want not of the main component, but of the image, the timer bar outline, and the inline, or the fill. So we want color, because color has the alpha property. We want in here, come on, expand. And we want color from here, hit the plus here. We want adding these properties. And the last one, image, color, hitting the plus. Okay, so now we got all those. Now we can expand all of these. RGBA, A is the alpha, so that's all we want to edit. Now, so we've got two keyframe sets. Now because we're fading in, by default this has the right values, right, where they're all visible. So all we need to do is edit the keyframes down here. We want all of them. Oh, well, that's fine. We can do that. Actually, that's unusual. I haven't seen that before. That's better. Usually when you hit this top one, it will select all of them. So just like if I click here, all of the keyframes are selected, which just makes it easy. Okay, now to edit this, I need to hit this record button. I just want to change the alpha a bit, so I can click here and make that 0, alpha, 0, and 0, 0. Okay, and that's all I want to do. So I stop editing, and if I scrub, we should see here it's transparent. And if I scrub along the timeline, it should actually appear. Okay, so we know this animation clip looks alright, and I can hit play like this, and it'll just loop. So that's what we want. Okay, so that's the fade in piece. We also want to make a fade out piece, so let's make a new clip. So same thing, timer bar dash fade out. So we basically do the same things again. Gonna get the color from each of these children. And probably the last one, the timer bar inline, color, bang. Okay, but this time I want to change the keyframes over here and leave these ones because we're trying to fade out. So record, go to the timeline, go over here, and then select all the keyframes. Have to do both because we're editing within this time reference and I want to select the things I'm editing. Now I want the here to be 0, 0, and 0 for the alphas. And I can stop editing, and if I scrub this, we should see that it goes from being fully opaque to fully transparent, which is the opposite of the other one. And if you're not sure it's opposite, we can go back to fade in, and I can play, we can see it fades in. If we go to fade out, hit play, we can see it's fading out. So that's all good. And the only other thing we wanted to do was make the bar fill in. So let's make another clip. And we do timer bar. Timber. No, not timber. Timer bar. It's better. We'll call it progress. Okay. So we're going to add a property. This time what we're after, because we're looking for this scale, we're going to edit the scale. We want this rect transform scale. Hold on, wrong thing. Not that rect transform. We just want the inline, which is the inner piece. We want the rect transform in there. Scale. Add that. And we can, and we'll see the X, so it's we want it to stretch across the X axis, which is currently 0, so that's fine. And if we go here, hit record, and I just want to change that from 0 to 1, because these are keyframes, it fills in every position in between. So that's why all I need to do is change one value. And now if we scrub, we should see that it's filled in all the values in between, it interpolates. And I can hit play here, and we see it just fill in, bang, bang, like that. So we have our 3 animation clips. Now the next piece is to coordinate these. Okay, and that's where the animator comes in. So we need to edit the actual, where is it? Panel timer bar. So it's automatically put in the 3 animation clips in here. Now this is like a state machine, and so on entry into the state machine, it will go, it's sort of defaulting to the first animation we created, but that's not helpful for us. Now let's think about this. What we want is, we want to have some triggers. So see here we've got 2 different panels, we've got layers and parameters. In the parameters part, we can create these triggers. So we want to trigger a fade in, we want to trigger the progress bar, and we want to trigger the fade out. So from here I can hit plus, and I can do trigger. I can give it a name, and that is fade in. I can do another plus, trigger, fade out. And we can do trigger, and we're going to have progress, start timer. Okay, and in fact, well, let's try a stop timer. Actually, fade out's practically the same as the stop timer, so I don't need that. I'll delete that one. Okay. To delete it, I just hit the delete key. Okay, let's rearrange these. So when it first starts, actually we could make it fade in automatically. Is that what we want? No, that's not what we want. It would automatically fade in no matter what's going on with the mouse. So we don't want that. We need to trigger it to fade in. So we need to create an empty state. And we need to make this the default. So where are we? Set as default. Now from entry into the state machine, it will go here. Let's give this a new name. So go to the inspector, and I'm going to call this wait for fade in. And we'll sort of stack them up there for a minute. Now timer bar, yep, that's fine. So let's move that across there. Let's move that kind of there. Maybe pop that there. All right. So if we go to fade in, I'm going to make a transition here. If we, once it's faded in, we can make a transition to progress. And then we could make it fade out. So let's see what that looks like for now, even without triggering it. Let's just see what it looks like. So what we can do is we can hit play. Now I've noticed this is a bit funky because we've been editing the state machine now. It'll be properly selected and we should see the sort of timer going off. And it did not do it. So even though it's actually playing here, it did not. Okay, that's fun. There's something funny. I don't know if this is like a new bug with Unity or what, but every now and then it won't show you. It has like a debug feature, and every now and then it won't do the debugging. Yep, it's still not doing it. See how this is sort of dead? It's not really active. Okay, we're back. I figured out what was going on. In order to debug, if I click in the inspector, if I click on something else and hit play, this will be just like before. Hang on. This is playing. See all the. Oh, go on. Right. Well, funnily enough, see, this is the debug view I was talking about. And I only got this going when I clicked on the actual object, the game object that has the animator controller attached to it, and then this kind of came to life. And of course now I wanted to show you that problem. When I clicked away from it, it was still coming to life, so that's helpful. Huh. Alright, so not, hang on, what if I select nothing? Okay, good one. Alright, so Unity is not going to be consistent about that. But anyway, when the debug works, this is what you'll see. You can see that when each animation is playing, and you can see the transition between the little line sort of glow thing going on there is the transition firing between each state. Okay, so that's cool. But this thing's just going on and on. We're not using the triggers, so we need to make some changes. So we want the transition to fire when we've triggered the fade in. So between here and here, which means this transition, we need to set the condition. Okay, so what we do here is we hit plus, we fade in as the default because it's the first one, and that's actually what we want, so that's that done. From fade in to progress, if I click on this one, and let me just adjust this bit here with this overlap between the animations is really intended for if you have a running animation, you've got a character like in a first-person shooter, then the idea is that between, say, running and jumping or some transition, you can basically blend them together. You can blend your animations. We don't need animation blending because the fade in is quite a separate activity from the actual bar progress thing. So I'm just going to make that super narrow. Conditions, right, so we've got to add our condition. The condition is start the timer, and that will take us from fading into the timer going. Then the next thing is between the timer, and again I'm going to have to adjust this overlap, the blending. Now we're going to add the fade out. Okay, and then automatically once it's faded out, it'll just go back into this state and it'll wait before firing again because it needs the fade in to start again. Now the trick is with these triggers, they can trigger and stay triggered, so we need to swallow those. We need to just sort of eat them up. So if we're in here waiting for a fade in to fire, if the start timer fired or if the fade out event fired, we want them to be used up instead of staying triggered because it'll make things happen out of sequence. So I'm going to go make transition and point it to itself, and on this transition I'm going to add fade out. Now I always forget, are these settings? No, that didn't help me. Exit time. Let's make another, see if I can make another transition to itself. Well, that was interesting. Right. That could be interesting to edit later on. So I've got another transition. This one will be the start timer. So now, if we hit play, it'll wait here. If I do the trigger the fade in, we'll see it fade in, and it'll wait there. If I hit the start timer, the timer fires, and that'll stop and wait there. And then if I do the fade out, the whole thing should fade out and disappear, and then it sits here waiting. If I trigger the fade out here, it swallows it because of this transition, and if I do the same thing for the start timer, it disappears. So that's what these transitions to self achieve. And again, so I can do fade in. Now while we're here, if I do the fade out, you'll see that that's stuck. So here I should really do another one of these sort of self transitions to consume a fade out, because the next thing we want is the that sort of, see how that automatically fired as well. I'll show you again what I mean. So if I do a fade in and then queue up, this is like queuing up a fade out, and if I do the timer start, so that fired, they've got here, the fade out was already queued, so it immediately jumped to there. Okay, but essentially this is working. So here we'll make that transition to itself and have it consume the fade out. We also need to get rid of the overlap, because that can do some funny things. Consume that fade out, because the only thing we want to cause a transition is the progress, the start timer. Okay, we could get pretty carried away and also do the, actually we probably should make sure if the fade in started here, we would consume it. Yeah, do that first, then it will let me move it. Add the condition, fade in, we're done. Okay, and fade out. Okay, in theory we probably need to add it here too, but we'll let it go for now, it's less likely. One last loop, make sure it all works. Okay, I'm going to have to, why is that highlighted? Hang on. It's alive by default, so, of course, I know why. So we've got to go into each of these and actually change this to be completely transparent for all three things. All three, set the alpha to full alpha. And now it doesn't look like they're there at all, which is good. Hit play. So it looks nice. I can trigger the fade in, and it's faded in. I can trigger the, oh, that's fun. It's reset the, yes, okay. Nice. Let's do that again. Okay, so it fades in and then it it holds it at that point. Huh. Sorry, doing the wrong one. Start the timer. So when it's starting the timer, it's the setting in the inspector is kicking in, and so the values are transparent. Okay, I know what I need to do. Let's get rid of this. In the animation, let's go back to the animation. For the progress, we should set the transparency in here. So that means we need to add these things, the color. That was the panel time. That's the wrong one. Okay, hold on. Wrong one. Hit delete. Add property image. Okay. We want the outline. And we want the inline. I should have given that a different name, but anyway. Hang on, expand that one. So the alpha is 0, 0, 0, and that's our problem. So that'll be true at both ends of the spectrum. So we need to edit, and for both time periods, we're going to have to set the alphas to 1. So alpha there 1, alpha there 1, alpha there 1. And then over here to this time period, select the alpha 1, and alpha 1. Stop recording, and if I hit play, oh, that's fun. Why has it decided to be up there? Okay, hold on. Okay, that's interesting. Timer bar. Oh god, it's the wrong one. Oh right. I thought it looked weird. I want the. Okay, hold on. Image. Yes, this one. Okay, let's try that again. One through to 1. Hey, B1. Okay, stop that. Okay, that's better. That's what we want. Okay, we can stop that. Let's go back to the animator. Let's hit play. Okay, so it's not there, and we hit trigger the fade in. It's faded in. Trigger the progress. Hey, progress. Oh, wrong one. Progress. Now trigger the fade out, and it did it. So fade in, progress bar, fade out. Perfect. Now actually let's look at that again. The fade out. Okay, so the interesting thing about the fade out, of course, is the second the fade out kicks in, actually it's probably not too bad, but the progress bar kind of unwinds all of a sudden. Okay, so that's that. Now let's add some code so that when the mouse hovers over the panel, we do the fade in, and if the mouse goes out, we trigger the fade out. The other thing we need to do actually is, so that was the fade out, wasn't it? Yes, it was. We actually should delete that. So the trick is, if the timer should really be automatic, but if the mouse goes out, the fade out should begin immediately, is what we really want. So actually I can get rid of this here, which means, oh, that was the wrong one. Actually, no, let's get rid of that whole thing for now. Got a better idea. This one, we're going to get rid of this. Sorry, yo, come here. Get rid of that. So actually we want the fade in to be triggered. Then once it's faded in, we automatically want the timer bar to fire. But if the mouse goes out, that triggers the fade out. Okay, so that's fine. So we've got our trigger here. Yeah. So actually we want this. So we just want the fade in and fade out. We don't worry about the start timer. So fade in, fade out. Right. So fade in. Now if the fade out happens, yes. We don't need the fade out to wait here, do we? Yes, we do. No, actually, if the timer hits there, the dialogue's going to appear, and it may as well fade out, if we think about that. So, we don't need that condition there. If we're faded in and the mouse, there's a very brief moment where if the mouse goes out, we could skip the progress bar altogether. So let's do that. Fade out. Okay. Now the fade in and fade out should probably be really fast as well, but we'll come back to that. It'll be an enhancement. So trigger the fade in, it fades in, and then it, so yeah, automatically it fades in, does the timer, and then runs away. And if we do a fade in, fade out, it'll immediately fade in and fade out. Fade in, fade out. So that's if the mouse goes in and out of the region too quickly. Okay, now there's one thing to look at, which is if we do the fade in, see that it's just a bit distracting when it unwinds the, let's have a look at the overlap here. Oh, it's not much, okay, but that's what's distracting. Let's move that up a bit. Let's try that now. Just see the timer unwind a bit too much. So here, trigger the fade in, and let's watch what happens. Yeah, that's a bit better. Okay. I think also the, if we look at, where are you? Oh, here, settings. So there's a duration, exit time. Right, exit time of 1, fixed duration. Let's have a look at this one. Okay. Fade out, fixed duration. Do that. So let's see what happens now. What I want to do is I want to be able to trigger the fade out early. Okay, so the trick to making it emergency halt the timer bar progress animation and go to the fade out, which we want if the mouse leaves before the timer bar completes. In this transition between them, I need a tick or untick that has exit time. So that's on by default. If we look at the other one, see it's on by default. So this means here, by taking that off, it won't be defined by time, by the exit time. It'll actually wait, the event of the fade out triggering will cause it to leave and go to the fade out. Now the only downside with this is if the timer bar has expired and our pop-up will appear, this fade out won't automatically fire. Which just means that in code I'm going to have to do that automatically. Okay, so because I want this special situation that if the timer progress animation completes, that we trigger the fade out at that point, I'm going to need to add a behavior onto this particular state. So this will be a new script, and I'm going to call it timer progress tracking. Okay, should make this a class kind of name. It's got to look like a C# class name. Okay, now this should have created a script file for me. Invalid state machine behavior. Why? What? Okay, now it's all good now. That was only because I had the dash in it before. So if we go to Visual Studio, this one, I should have a new file. There it is. So this is for our state machine behavior. So on state, enter, update, exit, move. So it's exit. Yeah. Can leave that commented. So we've got our animator class. So the animator class is all we need to trigger the event automatically for the trigger. So basically, here what we can do is animator.set trigger, and we can put the name of the trigger in here, and it should be fade out from memory. Fade out. Fade out like that. So that actually should do it automatically for us. There's actually a couple of other things we can trigger from there, but let's just test that. So now if we do play, all I should need to do is trigger the fade in. That should go to completion here. Ah, it didn't do it. Why? Do we get a complaint in the console? We don't. No, we do not. Okay, so what's happening? Let's maybe debug.log ended animation. Hang on, that's exit. Maybe move IK. Hang on, this might actually be the bit we want. Dot. Loop length. Right. Actually, this is probably what we want. Print gonna work? No, this is the debug.log. Okay, fine. Debug.log. Let's do this. So I think that's not going to work, because I think this is only called when it actually exits, which doesn't help us. Instead, we want the normalized time to exceed some number. It will be 1, most likely. So if state info.normalized time greater than 0.5 f. So let it get halfway through the animation and then trigger it to see if that works for us. Okay, the console's clear, that's great. Let's hit play and see what happens. And we're going to do the fade in. Okay, that worked. Yes, so it gets to halfway. Alright, good. That's the job. So I can do this, it'll go down there, it'll get to halfway. Yep, good. Alright, we have a solution. So, I don't need this code. All the stuff that's commented we don't need. Here we want that to be 1. And we don't need that debug. That doesn't help us much. Let's now try it. Clear out the console. So it should complete playing and then go up here. Once I trigger it, so do the fade in, it'll go down here, do the progress bar, and then fire the fade out automatically. Nice. Let's watch it up here. Fades in, progress bar, bang out. But if I hit this and then exit early, bang. So I can do both. I can exit early or I can exit at completion. And that's what I'm after. Alright, now we just need a class to, let me think, do we need, yes. So the other nice thing is now that we have our code that detects when the animation is complete, actually I can get rid of this bit too. What we can do is, now this will be interesting to see what we can do here, but then it would be nice if I had a reference to the I want to have the dialogue appear. I want to make that trigger. That's our vertical message box. Now okay, so because I want this special situation that if the timer progress animation completes, that we trigger the fade out at that point, I'm going to need to add a behavior onto this particular state. So this will be a new script, and I'm going to call it timer progress tracking. Okay. Should make this a class kind of name. It's got to look like a C# class name. Okay, now this should have created a script file for me. Invalid state machine behavior. Why? What? Okay, now it's all good now. It was only because I had the dash in it before. So if we go to Visual Studio, this one, I should have a new file. There it is. So this is for our state machine behavior. So on state, enter, update, exit, move. So it's exit. Hang on, this might actually be the bit we want. Dot. Loop length. Right. Actually, this is probably what we want. Print. Print gonna work? No, this is the debug. But log, okay, fine. Log. Let's do this. So I think that's not going to work, because I think this is only called when it actually exits, which doesn't help us. Instead, we want the normalized time to exceed some number. It will be 1 most likely. So if state info dot normalized time greater than 0.5 f. So let it get halfway through the animation and then trigger it to see if that works for us. Okay, the console's clear, that's great. Let's hit play and see what happens. And we're going to do the fade in. Okay, that worked. Yes, so it gets to halfway. Right, good. That's the job. So I can do this, it'll go down there, it'll get to halfway. Yep, good. All right, we have a solution. So I don't need this code. All the stuff that's commented we don't need. Here we want that to be 1. And we don't need that debug. It doesn't help us much. Let's now try it. Clear out the console. So it should complete playing and then go up here. Once I trigger it, so do the fade in, it'll go down here, do the progress bar, and then fire the fade out automatically. Nice. Let's watch it up here. Fades in, progress bar, bang out. But if I hit this and then exit early, bang. So I can do both. I can exit early or I can exit at completion. And that's what I'm after. Alright, now we just need a class to, let me think, do we need, yes. So the other nice thing is now that we have our code that detects when the animation is complete, actually I can get rid of this bit too. What we can do is, now this will be interesting to see what we can do here, but then it would be nice if I had a reference to the I want to have the dialogue appear. I want to make that trigger. That's our vertical message box. Now let's see, set off all animation finished, reset stop clock, come on, message box appear. This is the function. Okay, so we need a reference to the rise and info component, and we want to call this, we'd want to make this public. Okay, now how am I going to get a reference to this from the controller? Let's go back to Unity for a second. What object's that on? This could be fun. Okay, so this is the change I had to make these things cooperate. So just to go back, let's just explain it for a second. So from here, the panel timer bar, we have, this is where we have, go inspector. This is where we have our animator. Okay, that component is attached there. In our timer progress state, we have this behavior added. So this behavior is literally attached through the animator to this panel timer bar. Now, the AWS account panel, that's the button, and it has the rise and info component, and that's the component that knows how to make the dialogue appear next to it. It has a method. We go to the rise and info component. It has this method here, make message box appear. So we need to call that from inside this state, this timer progress tracking state machine behavior. Now the only way we can access those components is through the animator reference. So, but the good thing is we have that. So from here, when on the state update, which gets called, hang on, go back, every time it's sitting in here and updating the progress of this particular animation, this guy's getting called. We have our reference here. We know from our state info when the normalized time equals 1, that basically means the animation is complete. So here we can trigger our fade out, and we can also call a local function here to make the vertical message box appear. We have to pass that animator through because that's the reference we need to unpack everything else. So from here, I've written another helper function here which just gets access to the Horizon Info component from the parent, right? And why the parent? Because the timer bar is here, and the parent, which is this one, this guy is the parent of this guy. This guy is the one that's got the Horizon Info component, so we need to go to the parent to get that reference. Now we have that reference. Here what I'm doing is a little bit of defensive programming. If we didn't get it for whatever reason, which means the editor was messed up, we did the wrong thing in the scene, then we just log something to the output as a log warning to debug rather, which goes to the console. Okay, so that's only if we couldn't get it, but anyway, it returns whatever it got. Back up here, this is where we call that. So here we get that value, we checked that it wasn't null, and if it wasn't null, then we say, just for debugging, I've added this just now, we could get rid of this one actually, but we log to the console, make it appear, and then we use this reference that we just obtained to make it appear. Let's see that in action. So first of all, go to the console, and you can see I did some debugging, so I know that works. But basically, if we clear this, if I just trigger the fade in, okay, bang, and it immediately makes it appear. Now it makes it appear wherever it is. It doesn't cause it to move, so I'm going to have to call the move thing first. If I had hovered over here, that's what would have made it move, so we can actually close that and we can trigger it all again, and this time we'll see that it'll appear right next to the button. So nice. Let's do that again. I kind of like that. So when I fire this, we'll see that this will fade in, the timer box will kick in, and bang. Bang, just like that. Nice. That's perfect. And we can see in the console we're getting our make it appear message. Okay. Cool. Now let's go back to the code. Where's the move bit? So go to the rise. It's the raw. Now we got on pointer, enter and exit. These are the things we will need to use to cause the fade in and fade out to fire. So we can definitely do that. So maybe let's do that first, and then there's the code that deals with the movement. Actually, let's do the movement first. If we can, time and scale. Oh, where are you? Determine new locale, progress animation, we're getting there. New locale, yes, when animation finished. Okay. So now I'm going to make an editor variable animator. Yes. This will be the animator on our little info panel, our timer panel. Timer panel animator. Always default that to null. And then here, enter. Let's do this. Private void for timer action job. So in some cases I won't configure this, I'll only configure it for the AWS account button because the other ones aren't set up yet. So that's why I need to defend against this not being set up correctly. So if this doesn't equal null, then call this job, whatever that job happens to be, Then in the entry we'll do for timer panel. What we're going to do is at this point we know the animator is valid. So I'm going to do a set trigger, and the trigger will be fade in. And so this is a neat little trick. Using functions like this, with taking an action, I can use a lambda inside here to basically deal with variables. I can check them in one place, and then this should be fade out. And then I can just reuse that kind of code, make them nice one-liners instead of having if statements with blocks. Otherwise, I would have had that copied or duplicated rather, that kind of check all over, here and here. And that gets lengthy, and who needs that rubbish? Okay, so this is how we trigger the fade in and fade out. That should be ready to go. Let's see. Now I'll need to, over here, if we go to the inspector, we should have our timer panel variable now. We'll need to drag this guy into there. Right, see, it's got the animator, but there are other buttons, like this is another one, and it's not going to have that. There it is, the timer panel animator. I haven't built that yet, so I just need to copy it basically. So we'll leave that empty, but because we have the defensive code, that'll be fine. So now if I hover on here, it begins to fade in, that triggers the dialog, and that's it. Close that. Should go away and stay gone. Yes. If I go in and go out, there's no nonsense. The fade sort of lasts a bit, but I don't think that's too bad. See, there's the fade going in and going out again. That'll be to do with the duration of, there's like a minimal transition time. But if I go in, go out, yeah, see, that's just firing through here. That shortcut route. At least that shortcut's working. If I go here, begin the animation, then go away, again it doesn't fire. So that gives us a full... Nice, that's working nicely. Look at that. Progress bar begins, I can go out before it finishes. Nice. If I stay there too long and the progress bar finishes, bang. Yeah, I was warned. Cool, that's exactly what I want. Look at this. Progress bar, bang, there we are. Perfect. So that's how you can make, you can combine animation controllers. You can, just a little bit of extra code. In this particular one, it was probably one of the more complex ones I've done because I had to do this state machine behavior in order to track the progress of the animation using this method on state update. So this is the first time I've really had to do this, but then everything else is basically as before, largely. I've got to simplify some code, and in fact I could use animation and simplify this code a bit more. So the animation and the animation controller is really useful. Thanks for watching.